Welcome to Parent-Tween Connection Talks, where we bring you insight from the experts who can help you navigate life with teens and tweens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your host and founder of the Parent-Tween Connection. I've worked with teenagers and their families for more than 20 years, and I believe that the more supported and knowledgeable their parents and members of the proverbial village feel, the better they can connect with and advocate for their teens and tweens. And ultimately, that means we'll lose fewer kids to suicide. So join us as Parent-Tween Connection talks about anything and everything teen and tween related. And when we're done, we invite you to come on over to our Facebook group to continue the conversations. On today's episode of Parent-Tween Connection Talks, we're joined by Kat Reese, who is one of the founding members of the Parent-Tween Connection's Trusted Expert Network. Kat has been working with children and families since 2010, helping them connect with each other, learn to communicate, and create independent children by focusing on and developing their strengths. After working with children and families for a number of years, Kat chose to return to school and pursue a master's in psychology with an emphasis on life coaching. She is also a certified neurolinguistic practitioner and a certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner as well. Today, we chat about how to live with discomfort. Well, what kind of discomfort? Well, we talk about how to help kids explore trying new things, how to help support children and teens in learning to interact with new people, and how to help them identify their own values, which facilitates their ability to stand in their own power. Kat is based in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and can support families anywhere as long as they've got an internet connection. Kat, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're talking today about living with discomfort. We're specifically talking about not only the adults in our world learning to live with discomfort, but also how we can coach kids to live with their discomfort as well. Because if they don't, it's not something that we as humans are just magically born knowing how to do. I know some of us as adults do better than others, and some of us do better ourselves at some times than at other times. So I'm excited about this because I'm sure it's going to be stuff that we can learn for ourselves, but also that we can continue to model for our kids, because especially once they get to that like 9, 10, 11-year-old range, that's when they really start modeling our behavior and paying attention to our behavior more, and not just the words that come out of our mouths.
Yes.
So
it is.
The first thing that we wanted to talk about today is talking to our kids about trying new things. A lot of kids are afraid of starting something new because they feel like they're not going to be good at it, or their friends or the people that they're trying it with are going to laugh at them if they make a mistake. And I think that's true for us too.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts? What do we do? How do we model this, and how do we guide them?
So kids get ideas that they shouldn't feel discomfort, that things should just happen naturally. And so reframing that position to, you don't learn unless you fail. So failing is something we need to teach our kids to go after instead of run away from. Every athlete practices, and they didn't always know how to do certain touches of the soccer ball, or angling the basketball the right way to get it in the hoop. They had to practice and practice. So learning how to get over that, what is the word, where they feel that they should already be perfect from the start, because it's not natural to be perfect. And I think sometimes as parents we have this "you should have already known" attitude towards our kids, and that gives them the idea that they should have already been perfect when they were born. And kind of retracting that it's okay to fail, because we're all failing every day. And that's how we learn to do better, how to become a better version of ourselves.
Right. So one of the things that I've seen with a lot of families over the years, and honestly, that I was kind of on the receiving end of, like you said, is that idea of like, well, if you're going to do it, you want to be perfect at it. What are some of the ways that we can reframe that? Like one of the things that I've heard from another coach on our team is from in a sports environment, don't necessarily, like after a game, don't necessarily tell the student or the child, well, you should have done this, you could have done that, as if, they should have known it already, like you had said. But that, especially coming from a parent, one of the most valuable things that a parent can say is, I just love watching you run track, or I love watching you do the sport or do the thing, or I love watching you be happy. And I see that you do that in your violin lessons or your musical theater show or playing basketball. So those are some ideas that I've heard. What other like tangible takeaways can our listeners take with them to be like, this is how I reframe that? Because it's one thing to say, oh, it's okay to fail. But on the other side, if we expect straight A's, that's a different message, right? So do you have any suggestions here?
I think that 2-to-1 rule, where you give them 2 compliments to 1 correction, is a good rule. Because we do want them to get better, but if all they hear are criticisms or this is what I want you to do different, that's all they're hearing. So the positive before the negative, it's not even negative, but to a kid, it kind of feels like it's negative, right?
Totally is.
And not just in coaching, and not because I work with kids all the time, and trying to get them to feel the confidence to do new things. You got to have the right timing. You can't always do it in front of people, because then they're going to feel ashamed or feel shame that you're shaming them in front of people. So you need the right timing. You need the right tone of voice. So if you are excited, be excited about the happy things, the things that they're doing right, and then have a, and this is what I want you to do next. Can we do this? Kind of make it a conversation instead of directing. Giving them the power to feel that they have the choice to do better, instead of, my parent just wants me to do this, type of attitude.
Sure.
Because kids take your body language, your tone of voice, they take it all in, and they're trying to dissect, what the meanings are. And most kids do better if you have a happy, I'm so glad you tried this. You did so well trying. I have an idea. Do you want to hear it? So it gives them the kind of like, okay, they're on my side. They're trying to help me, instead of push me into something I'm not comfortable doing.
And I like that idea of asking if we can give feedback, because sometimes they just don't want to hear it. And I think the key there is that if they say no, we need to like zip it and be okay with that. And let it be. So, okay. So in terms of getting them to try new things, I'm hearing you say, support the concept that the trying is what matters, and trying new things, setting the framework that where none of us comes out perfect, much as we might like to think so, and setting them up. I think if I were to synopsize it in my brain, what I'm hearing is praise the process.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the end result, because that way it's, well, let's just try and see if you like the running aspect of it, or see if you like the kicking aspect of it. And then, if we're talking soccer, and then, if it's not something that they enjoy, let it be okay that they don't enjoy it, and praise the fact that they tried.
Exactly. Because the more you push kids to do things that they aren't enjoying, the more they resent you. So.
Yeah. And the more they pull back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's transition to a variation here. It's one thing to try new things, but one of the skills that we also have to learn as human beings is learning how to meet new people.
Yes.
And for some of us, that comes more naturally than others. For some of us, like I fall into the category of I've never met a stranger I didn't like, or at least wasn't willing to talk to, much to
Good
my
for you.
mother's chagrin when I was a kid. But at the same time, as an adult, there are times that I'm like, I just don't want to go meet new people. Like a friend of mine said to me today, this week has been too people-y, and I just don't want to go and meet new people. I don't want to engage. And
Yeah.
our kids are the same way. I mean, they're human, albeit
Yeah.
smaller, not quite fully developed forms of humans. So
Yeah.
how do we support them in meeting new people and interacting with new people? Because that's certainly a skill that they're going to need for the rest of their lives.
Yes. I mean, every job that we have, we're meeting new people.
Mhm.
So I think the idea is to get them comfortable being themselves. And what I mean by that is we have this perception that we're not likable in some situations, or other people might be cooler, or there's something better about this person that I don't have. Kids are interesting in that way. They're always sizing themselves up to other people. And meeting new people is scary because they don't know who this person is, how they're going to size up. Am I going to do something stupid that they're going to make fun of me for? And so teaching our kids to be more comfortable with themselves will allow them to be comfortable around other people. Um, so kids have this idea that they're the only people in this world,
Mhm.
and they feel that they're the only ones that are anxious, scared, nervous. And I even talked to this kid yesterday that, you know, nobody cares when you're walking up and doing a speech because they're all like writing notes to their friends or picking their nose, doing all sorts of weird things, right? They're not really paying attention to you. And so changing that thought process of they're not really interested in you usually, unless you're a social butterfly, then you're super social and super interested. But is it really interested, or is it a fake interest because they're just social people and they just want to know everybody? So getting them to understand human dynamics in a sense that we're all human and we're all just in this world learning. And the only way that you're going to make friends or get the sense of who other people are is to put yourself out there too. Um, when you're an introvert, though, you don't really care. um, and I, and being able to say that's fine. You don't have to be social. You don't
Mhm.
have to be that person that likes to be in the middle of a group and
Mhm.
waving their baton. You don't have to be that person. Um, I myself gravitate to the shy people, and um, I think at one time when I was younger, I was told that I was a snob because I didn't talk. And allowing kids to understand how our body language is towards other people too is really necessary in order
Right.
to feel comfortable around other people.
Sure.
Because I had no idea what my body language was giving to other people. So um, I think that's a great skill set to have as a young kid, to understand body language and how you're coming off to other people too.
And
So
yeah, we could do an infinite number of workshops just on body language, because
yeah,
what does a statistic say? Something like only 7% of our communication is actually based on the words that come out of our mouths. In fact, the rest of it is
body
the way that we
language.
show up, the body language, the way that we're dressed. People, and people do judge.
Yeah.
And so, taking a look at like, well, how is that person dressed compared to other people? Is that person smiling? Is that person not smiling? And
Yeah.
so many that, like you were saying earlier, the tone of voice is a huge contributing factor. I know my
If
mom always said to me, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, but it's true for the adults to the kids as well, not just when mom thinks the kid is sassing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Um,
those sassy ones are fun though.
aren't they? Aren't they? So one of the things that I did, I was always the new kid. I was always moving. We moved every couple of years. And so I was always the one having to fit in or having to meet other people. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I learned actually was to ask questions of other people. And I didn't realize until years and years and years later when I read How to Win Friends and Influence People that asking questions to get the other person talking is one of the easiest ways for them to think that they like you. Because if you're interested in them,
Yeah.
then they're going to love you. So one of the things that I've talked to kids about is to have like 5 questions in your pocket, so to speak, to ask somebody else when you meet them. Like, oh,
Yeah.
for kids, depending on the age, where do you want to go to college if it's a little bit older teen? Or what do you like to do for fun in the summer? Or do you have any siblings? Or what was the coolest vacation that you took? Something like that, because that way I feel like that's one little tool that I kind of keep in my pocket now, many years
Yeah.
later, to just break the ice. And so that's something, if I can,
That's a good
add
one.
my own thought in on the topic here, that can be a tactical takeaway for families to help empower our kids. That the more they can get somebody else talking, then number one, the more the other person's going to feel like you like them and feel like you're likable. But also, the more they talk, the less likely it is that you're going to say something that they perceive as stupid, which helps
Yeah.
us, like those of us who are very nervous about what somebody else is going to think of us. The less I have to talk and the more somebody else does, the better.
Yeah. But then there's those people that don't want to have those questions asked and they just walk away.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then you just have to be okay with that.
Well, and I think that too speaks to the idea that some of us as adults ultimately come to is that other people's responses aren't necessarily about us. They are more
No.
about them. That in that case, like you just said, they're walking away because they don't want the questions asked of them, not they're walking away because they don't like you.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know and so to that point, I would think, like, if a kiddo feels like, wow, that was really awkward, or they didn't like me because of this action, maybe helping them brainstorm, well, maybe there was something else going on. What other things could be going on in their head? Like, what might you be thinking if you had acted that way? And maybe
Yep.
helping brainstorm of different ways that it's not reflective of our kiddo per se. It's about something that's going on in the other one's head. So the
Yep.
other thing that I know you and I have talked a lot about, you were talking about, helping kids get comfortable being themselves. And holy cow, man, if I'd have had somebody help me with that 30 years ago, wow, would things have been different along the way, right? But I know
I
one of the
agree.
things, well, you're right. One of the things that we've talked about, you and I, is helping young adults, emerging adults,
Mhm.
recognize their values. Because if you know what's important to you and what your own values are, it's easier to, as you said earlier, be comfortable being yourself. And it's honestly, I feel like it's easier to understand who you are as a person and why things are so important to you if you realize they're tied to a specific value. So,
Yep.
what can we do to help our kids with that?
Um, so there's different things. You can go online and find like a values list and go through that. But I really like I can't remember where I learned this from, but someone said that values are action words. They are not, cake or cars. It's an action. So you value spending time with family. That's the value. And one thing to note is that our values change as we age. They're not concrete at all.
Sure.
So to reevaluate your values often is really important, and and I always like to do that as like a journaling exercise. Like if I've met one person one day and then a year later we meet again, I would probably bring that up. Like, what are your values now? Because experiences change our values.
Sure.
The people we interact with change our values
Hmm.
because we learn things and we learn more about ourselves. So as a teen, it's usually friends. They value spending time with friends. Every kid, every teen I've ever engaged with, family is close, but friends, social interactions are higher. And so when you're in a social situation, what are you doing to step into your power? What are you doing to make sure that your friends aren't overpowering your values too? Because that's what happens when you're influenced. um,
Absolutely.
and so there, I think values is such a broad, but also very concrete. Um, I don't think they're actually concrete until you're at least, our age or older. I don't know. Sometimes I think my values are still changing. Um,
Hmm.
you know, so maybe when you're dead, they're concrete. I don't know.
No, absolutely. Well,
But
and like I've even had that experience, I'm in my 40s and my dad is in his 70s and
yeah,
recently remarried. And we had some circumstances where I was like, wow, something is coming up that feels uncomfortable for me. And I was able to go back to my values and go, okay, it's not uncomfortable because of this aspect of the situation. It's uncomfortable because of this other aspect of the situation. And by going back to my own values, or even some would say like the 5 love languages, I was able to identify,
yeah,
oh, hey, here's why this feels weird. Like I knew it wasn't an intentional situation on anybody's part in the family. There was
yeah,
just a situation and I was like, wow, this feels weird. And I think that's important to recognize, not only for the friend interactions, as you mentioned, for teenagers, but for parents and the kids, because
yeah,
the fact is our kids usually are not deliberately trying to be jerks to us. Sometimes they just come by it naturally. But other
yeah.
times, like they're trying to find their own ways in the world. And when we
Independence.
remember, exactly. And when we remember, just as we're trying to tell our kiddos that the other kiddo's interaction tells you more about the other kid than yourself, I think
Hmm.
sometimes as the adults, we take the things that the kids do personally and we're like, they're trying to
Yeah,
hurt me or they're trying to be jerks. When in fact, if we can go back and go, okay, wait, why is this bothering me? Oh, because it flies in the face of what is important to me and like what my value is right now, then that
yeah,
gives us a more concrete opportunity to have a conversation with our kiddo, right? Like you're saying,
yeah,
and it's completely developmentally appropriate for teenagers to rank their friends and their social experiences higher than times with family, because
yep,
in that age range, that's 100% where they're at developmentally and psychologically.
yep,
Hurtful though it feels to mom and dad or aunt or uncle or whomever else,
yes,
but if we have a converse, or if we can look at those values and say to our kiddos, okay, I acknowledge that friend time is really important to you, but for me, family time is really important because you're going to be graduating in 2 or 3 years and you're going to be going off to college, as an example, and we're not going to have this time together. So can we work together to help meet both of our values? It's
yeah,
really important to me. And that way the kids understand a little bit better that it's not just us putting the thumb down on them or restricting them or being mean to them, which of course is how they receive it. My mom's being mean to me just to be mean to me. No.
yeah.
So I really like that. And I actually just recently did my own values assessment. My husband and I did them,
Oh,
and went
cool.
back and like evaluated them because, life changes, like you said. And so maybe when we're dead, they'll be concrete. So awesome. All right. So to wrap up our conversation for our listeners, um, we have a Parent Tween University that's based on the foundations of connection, which are create a safe place, observe, non-judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity, take your time, innovate, own your own story, and nurture. And those all spell out connection. And so we like to ask our podcast guests, which of those foundations resonates the most with them or with this topic, and why? So I asked Kat, and she said, own your own story. So Kat, why did that like jump off the paper at you? And like, how does that relate?
I think it relates. I honestly, all of these things I have been working on for myself since childhood. I, if you didn't know, I'm an introvert. People have always flocked towards me. I've never had to really work hard to to um, to do much on the social spectrum. And as an adult, I've had to really work on my discomfort because people don't flock to people when you're in your adulthood
Mhm.
time. So, owning my own story, I have been working on, um, and I want to help kids do the same because our stories are so individual and unique and inspiring, and everything that we do to improve ourselves is, going to inspire someone else, and to be able to stand into your truth and give that light to someone else that can help them shine to give light to someone else. um, I think that would be the best world ever. So yeah.
Awesome. So true. Awesome. 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 All right. Well, for those of you who are listening who are part of Parent Tween University, Kat has generously offered to do an additional training on how to actively listen to your preteen or teen. So we're going to go ahead and sign off for today. But if you are not yet part of Parent Tween University, check it out. All of our podcast guests give us extra little training tidbits for folks in Parent Tween University. So Kat, thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Parent Tween Connection Talks. Be sure to check the show notes for any links we mentioned. Also, be sure to subscribe to Parent Tween Connection Talks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so you don't miss out on any awesome information. If you'd like your own copy of the Foundations of Connection, you can find it right on our homepage at parenttweenconnection.com. Print it out, hang it on your fridge, and use it as a conversation starter with the folks in your family today. And if you want to feel more supported as a parent and have a closer, healthier, happier relationship with the tween in your life, enroll in Parent Tween University. For just $19.99 a month or $199 a year, you'll join a community of parents just like you who are dedicated to having the best relationships they can with their kids. You'll receive exclusive bonus trainings from many of our podcast guests and access to monthly group coaching calls based on my signature coaching program, The Foundations of Connection. So go to www.parenttweenconnection.com today to help ensure that you're the one your kids will talk to when they need someone they can trust. Until next time, keep talking and keep connecting.